But did we? All right. Okay. Welcome everybody to Talking Niagara with me, Peter Giblett, and him, Dave Wheeler. Say good morning to everybody, Dave.
Good morning, everyone.
So it is Tuesday, the 28th of January, 2025, and he's whittling away those days. He really is. So one thing we didn't get to yesterday, there was 27 new positions and increased labor cost and labor and benefits cost of $1.8 million for the city, which represents 0.9% of the 3.9% tax increase.
Yeah, about 1% almost.
Yeah, 1% of that tax increase. Should we have done it? Is there a time? I'm not saying that we should go on a hiring freeze. That often is a negative thing to do, but often, when I hear new positions, I actually wonder, well, do we need them? If you're replacing a person, clearly that's the salary that was already in place. New positions, I have to wonder.
Well, the argument goes like this. It came about because of the budget discussions. And Lori Coco pointed out we have 27 new hires coming on at a time when we're really strapped for cash. Do we need them all now?
Yeah.
Do we have to hire them now? Can we not freeze a lot of these hires to save money? The other argument was from CEO Burgess, who said, we are already behind. We're behind in our services. We're behind on our professional.
Yeah, I accept that. That's likely to be the case in many of these new positions. That's why they're there.
He says the city's expanding rapidly, and we're already behind in the amount of services we can duly commit to the people of Niagara Falls when they need these positions. However, Lori quite rightly says, and she was the only one that turned down the budget, by the way. She's the only one of council that voted against it.
Yeah.
And she voted against it because she doesn't think these 27 hires have to happen now, when we're in such.
That's exactly my point. Do they have to happen now? Sort them out in priorities. Let's get the 2 or 3 that are absolutely the most important that we need right now, and let's get them on board and leave the others.
And she points out too, but once you hire on somebody, it's pretty hard to get rid of them afterwards. Yeah. What if they are superfluous? What if we don't really need them? Can we not go a different, more cautious way? So she didn't buy Burgess's argument that we need them now. The rest of the council did.
Yeah.
And so they didn't question that much. But we are an expanding city. So you can see both sides of this argument, can't you?
I can. We are an expanding city. That's absolutely true. Which basically means that we've got expanding costs. We've got, and which is why the city budget is now larger than it was 10 years ago.
Yes, and I question this. Is this a result of kicking the can down the road? That is a phrase that the council likes to use. We have to increase the budget X amount and avoid kicking the can down the road where we're going to have to address these issues anyway. Well, they did that with their fleet. The equipment that the guys were using in the city was of lower quality and it was hard to get fixed, and so they just kept kicking that can down the road, and then suddenly they're going to have to replace it all. Rather than do it here a little bit, there a little bit, 1 year this one year that one. So they kicked the can down the road. Here also, these positions, are they a result of kicking the can down the road? We do know the claims of the CEO Burgess, and I believe him, that our city is rather antiquated. We needed new software, we needed new computer facilities, and we need new people to provide the services for a growing city. So how much of this, now I understand both the arguments there. Burgess wants it, all these things, because he wants to run a better, smoother city. So he needs to hire.
I get that. I get what his desires are. but also understand the people in the city's desires not to overspend, particularly right now.
Now, Jason Burgess was pretty smarter, I think, because the original request was for 38 new positions.
Yeah.
But staff pared it down, cut it by 11. So I think this is basically your negotiating tactics. Okay, look, we need 27, so we'll ask for 30, 40, in this case, 38. And then if they cut 11, it looks like, oh, we're being responsible. I have a feeling that the Burgess got most of what he wants. Now, I can't argue with Burgess about the computer and the software and the hardware that the city needs.
Well, actually, the thing is, I've not seen any reports. You see, somebody like myself who's got a history in software and hardware and systems implementation, I've not seen any reports that indicate where I thoroughly believe they are behind the times, but I've not seen them actually execute any reports to go and have somebody like myself go look at their equipment, look at their services, and actually put a plan in place that needs to be bringing it up to date.
Do you really need somebody to look at it when your car is a 2000 a 2000 Camry and you're going to put some more money into that, or do you automatically know that you're going to need a new car?
That's fair.
There could be a point there where you don't really need an expert to come in and tell you need. You got a Camry that's got 350,000 kilometers on it, and it's the year 2000.
Yeah, but yes, you do.
No one's gonna say, well, we better get an expert, a mechanic, to look at that car to make sure you need it replaced. You already know it needs replaced.
Yeah, we do, because what we don't want is another Arrive scam.
Yeah, we don't know something like that, but. And anyway, Burgess said the city doesn't take staff increases lightly. And here he is quoted, "I agree with you, Councillor Lococo. That is almost 60% of our budget is staff increases. But at the same point in time, we have a pretty high service level here. If you compare the city of Niagara Falls to St. Catharines, who has more population than us or Welland, we shovel more sidewalks than both those municipalities combined. We have more bridges, we have more roads, and yet we do it at a rate and cost that is below those two. We are just not doing it well enough." So Burgess is saying that we have a lot of issues that face our city, and he compares us to St. Catharines and Welland, and saying that we have pretty much twice as much as they have to do, a lot more than they have to do combined. Because of our special, and yet he sees our services not being fully streamlined enough, and that would take staff. So basically, Laurie didn't buy the argument that we need them now, but the rest of the council did. Now, when Laurie submitted her proposals at the budget meeting, there was three proposals, one from Newestag, one from Patel, and one from Lococo. If you read Patel's and Newestag's, they're I tip my hat to them for making proposals, but they really were amateurish, basically, and their sound, what they sounded like. But if you dig into Laurie's, it is very clear that she looked at the staffing problem clearly and recommended that not happen, and it would save us a bundle of money. I doubt very much if the other staff, the council members, even looked mildly that close to it as she did, sadly.
Yeah. Well, I would. That bothers me a lot, because if I'd have been voted in, one of the things I would have done would have been looking at budgets, looking at how much money we spend on things like this. It bothers me greatly about overspending.
Yeah, what Lori says too is once you establish a position, then you have now the city has pretty good, not the best in the world, but very good, uh, very good pension, very good health benefits. That's all a cost to the taxpayer. So when you have and a pension plans and so on, so when you hire somebody on the city, then it's very very difficult to get rid of them. Remember, this is a public position, and it's when they get rid of somebody in the public, they give them a big handout of money to get rid of them,
Yeah.
kind of thing. It remains to be seen. I kind of like Burgess because he's a no nonsense kind of a guy, and I like that, you know. And when he tells the council, when they say silly things like, "Oh, we want you to find $1 million worth of savings," and then he comes back with a few proposals and nobody wants to do it. You know, particularly nearly $250,000 on the fire department. Here's a comment from Randy this morning. Good morning. I'm jumping in mid-sentence, but the idea of bringing city services up to date is commendable. However, many of the positions are aimed at growth in the peninsula, which cannot happen at the financial pace that development landowners wish to see. There is infrastructure that is intended to grow at a time and pace easily offset by the numbers of growth over time. The developers want new sales now, so we pay now, and that requires new staffing. Obviously,
You
you
have
looked into it a little bit more deeply than I have.
Yeah, you make a fair point, Randy. You make a fair point, and clearly you've looked at some. I'm not saying that we don't need any of them. I'm not saying we wouldn't have required some of those 27 positions. My feeling is we probably could have, 10 to 15 was a more likely, more respectable target, and
So I'll bring it back. There's 881 Slick. Hey, GB.
yeah.
Master Parts Unknown. How's it going? We need to do some. We need
He's
to do
talking
some
about
chicken wings again, lad.
he's talking about Patel not reading the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They did come up with proposals, so there's only 3 that did, but only one was really worth the time to read.
Well, I would have gone through that with a fine tooth comb. I suspect there's 10 or 15 that we do need and that we absolutely must have, but there's a further 10 or 15 that we absolutely don't need right now.
The thing I really didn't like about the whole reporting on them, what was reported on the meeting, because I didn't watch it myself, I just read the budget, was in the meeting when it seemed to be a lot of the counselors are kind of confused, and then Mona Patel goes on and as we talked about earlier, she goes on about she goes on to a bit of a speech about having to do something about the governance of Niagara and change it to the ways in which the province is trying to direct us, and where we will lose some of our politicians. And so she goes on about that, and I thought to myself, does she really know what she's doing? She's going to lose her job if the amount of politicians are reduced, because I don't think
she's talking about region wide the number of politicians, because we have that doubling up of the region plus the cities.
Yeah, and of course, but this is like what I kind of like. So she gets up and she speaks on this, and it's reported in the review about how she comes up and kind of pushes the idea that we need reform and governance, and we have too many politicians and too many duplications. But I mean, yeah, that's really good. But all she's doing is echoing what has been said many times over the last couple of years. And it's a distraction. And the reason why I put this out there is, okay, we can't do anything about fixing our bringing down our taxes very much. So what we'll do instead is we'll talk about if making efficiencies by changing the governance. And that's how we'll save money. If we change the governance of the area, that's what we'll save. No, get on with what you could see before you. That's pie in the sky. That's down the road. You could say stuff like that, but I want to know why you didn't do a better job at digging into the budget and finding, and not just her, but the other councillors, save Lori. Why didn't you dig in there and find ways of doing it?
And I'm not saying, you see, here's the question. To dig into the budget, that's not to say that you will come to the same conclusion as Lori Lococo did. Lori's got her right to her view. If I'd have dug into the budget, I may well have, made different conclusions. Well, I don't dig into the budget the way you did, but we don't have the detail that the councillors do. If I'd have had the detail the councillors did, I would have been questioning certain bits of it.
Yeah, well, that's the whole idea. That's why you have 8 councillors, so you get potentially 8 points of view.
Exactly, and that's not to say that Laurie's wrong or I would have been wrong, or it's that you have a combined view that takes all of those questions into consideration. And part of the problem we have is that nobody's actually asking those questions. And again, Mike points out 700,000 to the hub.
That's still that
bothers me a lot.
Yeah, where is it? Where is that money going?
Yeah,
tell me where that money's going. Who is it directed to? Yeah. I have some suspicions that it's towards salaries or whatever. Yeah, $700,000 doesn't sound like a whole lot, but we never really know where it's going. All we know is we get this propaganda about the hub being wonderful. Yeah, but where does that money go? And we've had some controversy over it because some of the startups that were supposed to be Niagara's were actually from other areas.
Yeah, the controversy has not been resolved. Right, the lawsuit was simply withdrawn as a convenience, and the controversy has never been resolved.
Where's that $700,000 going?
Yeah, right. Okay, so why buying Canadian isn't as easy as it sounds? Yeah, actually, and it truly is, because as we were talking about, it's the same with buying American. There's 50,000 parts to a car, for example, is nothing quite as complicated as a car. Funnily enough, there's about 30,000 parts to an electric car, 50,000 to a gas car, and some of those parts, teeny weeny little parts, can't be made anywhere but, let's say, Taiwan or Bangladesh or something like that, right?
Yeah, there's another story coming up about an AI company called DeepSeek that will factor into this as well. But we'll get that in a minute. Yeah, so the advice is, now we've all gone around and we said, okay, we're going to be in trouble. And on Paul's show, as I said, they had Bob, the owner of Bob Benner, the owner of Hamill Machine Company, and they have stalled. They have plans for some expansions, and they're not going to go ahead with that in the meantime because of what Trump says. In his words, that's scary stuff, so you can't go ahead with new investments or anything until you see what's going to happen. So there you have it. There are. How do you buy Canadian? Try to find a Canadian T-shirt. No, can't find it. You can find some American T-shirts.
Even if the logo on it, printed on it, is a Canadian logo, the chances are it's made in Bangladesh or Vietnam or somewhere like that.
Yeah, I used to
buy an American one.
My work coats and stuff, I used to buy Tough Duck because they were made out in Alberta, but rather than buy Carhartt. Carhartt was made in the States, and Tough Duck was made in Canada. I thought the Tough Duck stuff was even better than the stuff out of Carhartt, but I bought but everybody wants that Carhartt symbol, because it's kind of like Armani or something in the worker guys' mind. They like to have that Carhartt, like people like to have Harley Davidson. They like to advertise for Harley Davidson, and some people like to advertise for Carhartt. But I used to buy Tough Duck because I knew that it was made in Alberta. I'm not so sure that it's happening like that anymore, or how much the Alberta people can put it together. Boots, I've heard of shoes and stuff that were the British used to buy. Dockers, I think it was. I forget which one it was.
Dockers, yeah.
Yeah, because they were made in the UK, and I would buy those boots made in UK too, because they had better sizes, more similar to the sizes that were around before everything started being built on like Singapore or someplace like that. But it's harder and harder to find that. Even Dyson, the guy that made the vacuum cleaner in Britain, he has to source out all his parts to China, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to compete. And that's the kind of situation we find ourselves in here. If you want, like you said, the car is built, like you could buy a car built by Toyota, but it might be assembled in Tennessee. Or it might be assembled here in Canada, like the RAV4.
You'd not know, off a, ignoring for a moment Toyota, which is a Japanese brand. If you were to take a GM brand or a Ford or something, you'd not know whether your car was made in Detroit or Windsor, would you?
Yeah, that was the problem when they had some of the big NASCAR type of races, when there was complaints about the Hondas coming online, and you should be driving American cars. Well, somebody pointed out, that Dodge that just won that race was built in Canada.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that it is very hard. Now you can find foodstuffs and stuff. You're not going to be able to find oranges grown in Canada, but you can avoid tomatoes coming from California, maybe, because we have hothouse tomatoes here locally, so we can get them.
Well, I don't remember exactly where I was, but it was a few years ago. I was about 100 miles south of the Canadian border, and I went into a supermarket, and I forget which one, and basically there was Canadian produce, as much, mostly American produce, but again came across these, things that were Canadian produced, Canadian apples and Canadian bread and things like that. There's a lot of it. We get those sort of stuff goes across the border all the time.
We produce we produce cage match wrestlers like the Green Bastard of Parts Unknown.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff that people don't even know that it's Americans buy it all the time, but they don't even know it's Canadian, and vice versa. We buy it all the time. We don't even know it's American.
Yeah. So when you buy your computer, right?
Yeah.
It's going to come from offshore. Things like that. If you want to buy a bag of coal, you can get Canadian coal, but it's probably going to be even hard finding that. I used to buy chestnut coal on the Seaway because I had a coal insert in my old fireplace, but you can get it on the Seaway, but that chestnut coal came from Pennsylvania. So I'm only bringing that kind of thing up because, where are you going to find it? Where are you going to find that Canadian stuff that you can? I think that's the only thing. The only thing I can think of is make sure you could, whenever possible, support your local farmers, your local manufacturing if they do have some. I don't know. It is very hard. Okay, buy Canadian. So you're going out to buy a pair of pants today. Well, are you going to be able to find one built?
You're more likely to find one made in Bangladesh than Canada, right?
Yeah, you might get designed in Canada, but if you
Yeah.
look closely, it will be made in Bangladesh.
Yeah.
Now, you don't want to put up tariffs against the Bengalis because they're a very poor country and they depend very much on the export trade. They're trading their labor for stuff they get from us, whatever that might be. But you might want to put the restriction on anything coming from China because China,
Well,
if you can avoid, if you could buy something made in Bengali, Bangladesh, or Vietnam compared to what's made in China, you might want to pick those two if you want to pick. But to find something Canadian, I don't know.
Yeah.
I bought a
again,
T-shirt in the mid '90s that was made in Canada, and I held on to it because I thought it must be the very last one ever made.
well, Mike's right. Walk through Canadian Tire or Walmart and tell us what's Canadian. Very difficult.
And how to restrict buying stuff that comes from the United States and Canada. So you want to buy a box of screws, right? Even if you buy Robertson screws, they might be coming from somewhere else. If you want to buy nails, is that Canadian steel in those nails? It's pretty darn hard.
You'd never know because, in fact, actually, those probably the label on there will say sourced from multiple nations.
And I'll point this out. When I was working, I worked as a contractor at Stelco quite a bit, and I remember we had to build a lot of stuff out of steel for the coke ovens there, and the steel that we were using came from Brazil, and I thought that's so ironic. The stuff we're building to improve and repair the coke ovens in a steel mill, the steel comes from Brazil, not from Canada, not from even the company itself. And it was explained to me basically each department has its own budget, and they look for efficiencies, and they will buy whatever cheaper. So Stelco will not buy its own steel if the Brazilian steel is cheaper. If you're looking for flat bar or round bar or whatever else.
Well, it always amazes me that we go buy something from Brazil, and if that steel is made in Brazil, maybe the actual individual item, steel sheet, it may be cheaper in Brazil, but surely you'd think that bung it on a ship or bung it on a truck and drive it up here, that's got to add to the cost.
Well, it goes on a ship and then it comes up, of course, and it comes in huge bulk.
Yeah.
So, but it wasn't the best. I remember I was cutting 5 inch wide, 5 inch by 3/4 flat bar, and there was a zone in there where there was a hard spot or a carbon spot, and as I pulled a torch across, it would always blow out at the same spot every time. So you couldn't cut a nice straight piece. There would always be a hole there because there was in that flat bar, there was a problem throughout the whole thing. So it isn't as quality, but it didn't matter for us because we weren't building a piano,
Yeah. And okay, so important point here. Tariffs don't restrict anything from coming or going anywhere. Tariffs are intended to offset the dumping of cheaper commodities into another country's market, thus killing the ability of a more expensive country to compete. Yes.
That's right. And what Trump keeps talking about is the flourish of American activity, industrialization of the United States under McKinley. Prior to that, as a matter of fact, they part of the American Revolution, part of the peace treaty they had with Britain. It was conditioned on the United States buying industrial goods from the UK for 75 years. So it wasn't a straight unconditional surrender. It says we'll abide by this, but these are the conditions that you have to buy X amount of our industrial goods.
And in fact, actually, that was that was a great deal for the US, and that was a great deal for Britain, because that actually meant that the US probably didn't have that much capability at that particular time. That's why they entered into that agreement, and that enabled them to develop their own manufacturing in time.
And that's why, too, the borders of the United States were as big as they were, because the greedy Brits figured that if they made the United States as big as they possibly could, Britain would be able to sell them more and more manufactured goods. The border should have been the Ohio River, and they had no claims to the land in and around Lake around Huron lakes or Lake Michigan, and that because that could have still been held by Britain, but they handed that stuff over in hopes that the Americans would quickly expand and require lots and lots of British manufactured goods. So that's how really the wars happen, and really how the terms of come out. But he talks about McKinley, and that's exactly what they did. After a certain point, McKinley put up tariffs to protect the early industry of the United States, to make sure that it wasn't overwhelmed by the manufacturing, because they weren't manufacturing really good stuff then. Britain and France and Germany were,
up until probably the 1850s, 1860s, America, the US manufacturing was way behind European manufacturing.
Well, during the Civil War, they depended on British and French guns.
Absolutely, they did. Yes, yeah.
I mean, there was countless.
So that really means that we're talking about 1870s before American manufacturing started to flourish on its own.
Yeah, 80% of the American public lived in rural areas until after the Civil War. Then the shift came rather rapidly to urban areas, and that's when the manufacturing really took off. And like we financed, like our rich people financed China and took our stuff over there to be manufactured, the Brits did the same thing. They were manufacturing. They saw the potential of cheaper goods coming from the United States, so they took their money and invested in the United States in its early beginnings. So that's just
capitalism for you.
Capitalism,
yeah. All right, let's move on. Trump wants neighbors to take in Palestinians and therefore clean out Gaza. So that was his agreement with Netanyahu, eh?
Idiot. Like, sometimes Trump has really got to kind of think twice before he talks. Do you remember?
Yeah.
During his first term, and he backstabbed the Kurds. If I don't know if anybody caught it, but lately when he talked about Turkey and the Kurds, he was nice about the Kurds. Now he told Turkey to back off against the Kurds, right? But in his first administration, he couldn't care. He let Turkey bomb the crap out of the Kurds, and just kind of shrugged his shoulders. The Kurds in the U.S. have had a very tight relationship, and it upset the U.S. Army military very much, particularly the guys that were working with the Kurds and had been fighting ISIS year after year. Kurds really took a beating from ISIS and from Saddam Hussein prior to that, and they were fighting very well. Now, he has spoken about Turkey to back off against the Kurds, but he had to learn that. And right now he's talking about, okay, Gaza is destroyed, so we'll get rid of everybody and build it up. Well, everybody knows if you get rid of them, the Israelis are going to move in and not let them come back. I don't think he even realizes that. I mean, that's exactly what the Israelis have wanted. The river to the sea, as I've pointed out many times here, was originally a Likud slogan. It's number one on their charter, that they're going to take all the land from the river to the sea.
Well, half of Gaza's already gone.
Gaza and make it Israel.
Yeah.
And that is their intent. And right now, Trump is just walking right into that trap that Netanyahu is
and
set.
half of Gaza's already gone, right?
What's that?
Half of Gaza is already gone.
Yeah, over 60
now. Yeah, there's nothing there.
Yeah, and that's his argument. That like he is saying voluntary migration. It's not voluntary migration. It's expulsion.
Yeah.
Even the I don't know the most foolish that Ben Shapiro sounds like. He says, "Oh, the best thing for the West Bank and Gaza is voluntary migration, where you can get them." There is no such thing as voluntary migration. These people don't want to leave. The only thing you have in your toolbox is massive expulsion, which they did in 1948 in Nakba, and that's why you have that problem. They expelled at that time 700,000 Palestinians. Now they say, well, Jordan can take them, Lebanon can take them, Egypt can take them. Well, Jordan did. Jordan took many, there's over 1 million Palestinians in Jordan. There's all kinds of Palestinians in Egypt. There was Palestinians in Lebanon. There's Palestinians in Syria.
Yeah.
And when I was in Libya, there was Palestinians in Libya. And why is that? Because they got pushed off their land and they had to go someplace. Not all of them could go to the West Bank and Gaza. The American politicians are willfully ignorant about all of this.
Absolutely, and this is just another example of that, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Seriously, you took their land and you pushed them aside, and then you say, okay, we want the rest of what you got.
Yeah.
Now this of course has upset everybody, and I don't know if Trump is just thumping his chest on this one. He's obviously listening to his own ambassador, really, who's gone over there, who said there's no such thing as a West Bank. There is no such thing as settlements. This all belongs to the Jewish state and so on. Remember, this is an ethno-religious state. It is not the same as our democracy. It's kind of like it's an apartheid state, basically, similar to South Africa. South Africa had a great democracy as long as you were white, and Israel has a great democracy as long as pretty much as you're a Jewish person, basically. And although there are citizens of Israel that are Palestinian, but they don't have full rights. They have a pretty good life, but they don't have full rights.
Yeah.
And even the far right wants them out. They want the Christians out too. They go around and spit on Christian cemeteries and spit on Christian churches in East Jerusalem. I don't think Trump. I don't know if this is just another one of his outrageous bargaining chips, but this is very, very bad, very, very bad. And I seriously don't.
It shows a lack of understanding of the whole problem of Gaza.
Yeah, the biggest problem I find, not just with politicians, but everybody I almost ever talk to, have nearly complete ignorance of what the history of that area is. Basically, you have this thing called Zionism, starts in 1897 in a place called Palestine. And at that time, 5% of the population of Palestine were Jews. About 80% of it were Muslim Arabs, and about 20% of it was Christian Arabs. And those are the people that are being shoved off their land, the Christian Arabs and the Muslim Arabs, who we now call Palestinians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Moving on. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni says Islamic culture is not compatible with European values. Oh my God.
Yes. The reason why I put this here is because I'm beginning to hear it more and more and more about uh, can Islamic people or people from Islamic states, are they compatible with Western, um, not just Western values, but Western ways of doing things? Can the Islamic peoples of the world fit into the uh, Western ideologies and the governments? We find that obviously secular Muslims have no problem at all, right? They get their education, they come here, and they blend in quite well. As a matter of fact, you probably, a lot of people you're talking to don't even know they're Muslim, just like a lot of
Yeah,
people who are Jews, you wouldn't know who they were Jews unless they told you.
yeah, exactly.
But it is in places like France and Germany and most of Europe right now are having a lot of trouble with their Muslim migrants coming into the country. When Germany brought in 1 million Syrians, they had a whole lot of problems with them, and Merkel then tried to push them out into the other European nations. Sweden is at war with his gangs. There are mostly Islamic gangs,
But
and
those don't
crime rates have gone way up. Yep.
but those gangs, etc., those cults we often look at more when we critique more in things like this are actually don't represent the majority of Islamic people who live in Britain and Spain and places like that, or in Canada for that matter. Most Islamic people just want to kind of bring their kids up in a better place than they were brought up in.
Well, you have whole sections of London or something like that, and they're all Islamic peoples of a certain
Yeah.
ethnic group. The women wear the veil across their face, generation after generation. It seems. Is that
Well,
the
actually, the interesting
fact that women are secondary citizens? Oh, this is
yeah,
the
but
charge
that has
against,
changed over.
not my voice, but they say, well, women are secondary and they're not going to get any real chances within a Muslim society, within democracy. It just doesn't fit. What is your comments there?
Well, my thinking about that, Dave, is that is actually, you wind the clock back, 40 years. You would not have been able to tell a Muslim woman from a Hindu woman in much of England. You wouldn't know from the way she dressed because she didn't wear hijabs and things like that, because she was much more um, open dressing, didn't look Muslim per se, right? That has changed over the last few years because one must wear the hijab, one must put veils on, is a thing that has taken place even within white Muslims. There's been a movement of that which has been supported by some people, but it's not everybody.
Well, that's my point. We see the subjugation of women, and of course, that's not my voice, but it's
That's it.
the
But the subjugation of women is another issue that needs different solutions, and the solution comes by showing there are better alternatives.
Well,
There are plenty of women.
are you going to actually have it happen? If you have a very large population of Algerians and Moroccans in, well, not Moroccans. Moroccans are fairly Western looking, but Algerians in France, and they've been there for generations and never been able to blend in.
Yeah.
The million refugees that Merkel brought into Germany, Syrian refugees, did not blend in.
Yeah.
The ones that they brought into Sweden and Finland and Denmark have got have caused a lot of trouble. Crime rates have gone way, way up, uh, and their women are being attacked. Now look at the Pakistani grooming gangs in Britain. There were Pakistani Muslims that were victimizing young non-Muslim girls because they can do that with non-Muslim girls in their idea. They can't do it with Muslim girls. That would be a sin. But to groom young girls that aren't Muslim, so I'm thinking, is there? And I can say also there are Jewish sects that don't really blend in too well either, but they are so much smaller in numbers that it really wouldn't happen. As I said before, when Islam was more moving towards secularism, the Muslim countries, it was a lot easier for them to just blend in. But the shift towards fundamentalism in all aspects of Muslim society, is it going to make it impossible for them to fit in completely? Now, that is the argument. Now, for a guy like me who knew Muslims in the 80s, they had no trouble at all. But,
couple of comments for you here. We've got Kip Finn saying Islam cannot coexist with Western way of life because they refuse to assimilate their way of life here. Right.
That's not all Muslims, though. Like I said before, you're probably talking. I bought a car of a Muslim woman, and she looked like any other woman. She didn't have a hijab on. Nothing, So.
And my wife's Muslim, and she doesn't wear any of that stuff. She won't wear any of that stuff because she doesn't support the subjugation of women.
Yeah, but would you have a choice if the Muslim community was bigger in Niagara and they were putting a lot of pressure on her?
She wouldn't do it. Pure and simple. I know her. She wouldn't do it.
So we also have to remember that Muslims come from a variety of different countries. They come from anywhere from Indonesia, India. There are Arabian Muslims. There are Yugoslavian Muslims. There's Muslims from all over the different world. And I can tell you the ones that came from Lebanon and Syria when I was in Libya were much more cosmopolitan. You wouldn't even know that they were Muslim. Also in Libya, oddly enough, when I was in Libya, the only ones that covered their face were the old ladies. All the young women did not dress like that at all. They had
the interesting thing is about that. Yeah, I agree that that's the way I found much of the Muslim world, other than Saudi Arabia, where it's enforced that you actually have to wear the veil. And again, you go across the northern part of the Mediterranean, and you find many Italians and many French and many Christian peoples across northern Mediterranean that wear veil, women wear headscarves as well.
Oh yeah, and a lot of Jewish sects.
Exactly.
Some Jewish sects you wouldn't be able to distinguish the Jewish women from Muslim women.
Yeah. And okay, Randy makes a point here. Compatible is a very dangerous word, that it puts one religion against another, whereas specifically speaking, the laws of a society may not be compatible with a neighboring town, and that is somewhat acceptable.
Yeah, that's right. Both the Mormons can be bigamists, so they had to adjust that part of their religion. They're the Mormons out west. Men were and still are permitted in some sects of Mormonism to marry more than one woman.
But again,
and that's the same as Islam. You can marry up to 4 wives in Islam, but
but only in certain parts of the world.
Yeah.
It's not permitted. It's not permitted.
Would you then say that the religion is being persecuted because a man cannot marry more than one woman?
Interesting question. Yeah. Right. Okay. Betty's saying my problem is that is it going to interfere with decisions in Canada? look who they married to foreigners.
Yeah, we are at a kind of a crossroads here. We're supposed to be a multicultural society, which I think is kind of bunk.
And
Where
again,
we're supposed to be allow people to indulge in their own culture. I think that's going to happen whether you make it a law or anything.
it does happen.
Before multiculturalism, you had Polish people acting like Polish people. You had Italians acting like Italians. I mean, the Polish food or Italian food or the Polish church or the Italian church or the Armenian church, they were still there, and that was multicultural.
Exactly. And you still got those people moving into groups with their with their neighbors. Maybe there were areas that Serbian areas or Italian areas, etc., right?
Yeah. So
all right. Hang on a moment.
Still had it, and then I like pretty much better the American system. It's a melting pot thing, where you are. Once you become an American, you're definitely American. It doesn't matter where you come from, and secondarily, you are from where you are. So if you're Irish American, you're American first, then Irish. Here, it's you're Irish first, then Canadian.
Yeah. Okay, so I heard so Betty's saying I heard we will become Sharia law or something, Dave. No, absolutely not.
Never.
Not going to happen. There is no way that Sharia law is going to be part of Canadian law. We sometimes when we are looking for problems, we're looking for resolution to certain problems. We may ask questions like, what do they do in Sharia law? But that doesn't mean to say that we in Canada will adopt Sharia law. It's not possible. Common law and Sharia law don't necessarily go together. And that's not to mention individuals. Okay, body cams are coming up on NRP. It's about time we hold them accountable. Okay.
Okay, I wasn't aware that they didn't already have them. I thought most police forces already had body cams.
I thought they already had them. I thought they should be accountable. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Okay.
Okay, well, you know what this means? Anytime I'm pulled over, I'm going to make sure that the cop sees my best side, because I want to make sure that my profile on their camera is the best possible one. And actually, I might even try a few acting things, to be or not to be, because I know a camera's on me.
Make sure you take my picture here, please. Type of thing. Yes. Yeah.
Well, some of the ladies are going to freak out. Oh, my makeup.
Sorry, officer. I can't open the window yet.
I have to comb my hair. I didn't have time to make myself up.
Yeah.
Do you have a filter on that? Do you have a filter on that? I don't like to film myself without a filter.
But actually, talking about body cams, there are some movement out there that say we should wear our own body cams.
Well, I would suggest that everyone kind of assume that there are cameras on them all the time, body cameras or otherwise.
Yeah.
Look what happened to Obama when he was in the inauguration speech. People zeroed in on him, and then they had lip readers on him. So he couldn't even have a private conversation with Trump without somebody zooming a camera in him and then getting a lip reader to tell you what he was saying.
Yep.
So you kind of assume that there's somebody watching all the time.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I'm highly suspect of my lamp right over there. There might be a camera in there. So I got to get my best side.
Yeah. Well, it's like,
I told you about my phone, eh? I had my phone was on, but I wasn't watching anything. And I just said by myself, I said, oh, like I was thinking of Amy Winehouse. I said, oh, Amy Winehouse, she was a great singer, and it's such a tragedy. I said it, I vocalized it, right? And then I got a whole pile of stuff about Amy Winehouse, just like out of the blue. So my phone's obviously listening to me.
Okay, so Gary Wilkins is making the point it's only NRP and Peel that don't have body cams in Ontario. Right?
Oh boy.
Yeah. Randy, who lives in Glasshouse, right?
Yeah, really.
Right. And they should be mandatory for the safety of both, both people. Those, yeah. And absolutely, I think I agree with that, Betty, 100%. Right. We should have them. They should be mandatory. I thought they were mandatory. I've been, I thought they had been mandatory for probably 10 years.
Well, yesterday I saw a whole pile of cops at Summer Street again. The Summer Street home. There was 2 or 3 squad cars, cops out, a number of them. And yeah, you could use a body camera because you want to know what they're having to face sometimes, not just accountability on their part, but they can actually, with a body cam, show you sometimes the things they have to put up with.
Oh, yeah. I believe that. I can believe that. And interesting that a few years ago, a paralegal friend of mine showed me a picture of actually a police arrest or police traffic stop, and the camera in the police car could pick up everything that was said in that police stop.
Well, I know of when a guy I worked with, an associate of his was dabbling in substance, so the rumor was, and because this guy would come in to see him once in a while, just have a beer or whatever, because he was a friend of his. He found out that he actually spotted the RCMP or one of the agencies, and it was either provincial or RCMP, and they had this big cone thing that they had directed at the picture windows, the big windows in his the front of his house, because they could magnify any kind of vibration that was on that window and find out who was saying what inside the house. Now, I think that's an intrusion.
It is.
Really, I think don't you?
I had a client
or something like that.
I had a client who was telling me that their neighbor was doing exactly that on their house. Right.
And, unfortunately, you can buy those devices. You can buy all kinds of those devices. You can buy, like I said, and assume that you are being filmed and listened to at all times.
Well, her solution to this particular one about being watched by the neighbor was you can buy these things that are white noise machines, and basically what you do is you set up a speaker that sticks to the window, and that speaker produces white noise on the window that stops them being able to listen.
Yeah, and with drones, with cameras, hidden cameras, you never know. Like even now, I imagine, like cops don't even have to follow anybody. They can just put some kind of GPS unit on your car. 8081 Slick. What did he say? What did Gary say?
The problem is, Peter, the NRP won't pay out. And I believe that. I agree, Gary. It's a big problem. The NRP has been making money for years off these, these cameras. Now it's about time they turn that money into the webcams, into their body cams.
I don't understand. What kind of money are they making with what?
I said when those flash boxes where they're actually taking fines from there, they're making enough money from those fines that they can, they should be able to get enough to pay for that, right?
Yeah.
And certainly the way that many of the police in the UK are funded by those traffic cams.
Well, are they the Niagara Regional Police, or are they the Niagara Regional Cheese Smugglers?
Yeah, interesting. Right. Okay. So what? Aren't we watch your cameras on every street in big cities, right? But back in the sticks, no.
Yeah,
They're not
they're quite right. In urban areas, you can imagine, but still, in any situation, you have to be cognizant of. There's always a camera or a listening device somewhere, somehow. So
NRP added $1.8 million for new guns.
yeah. Don't tell your phone how much money you have in the bank. It might tell somebody else.
Forget the apes, forget the aliens. A single look at our race today should prove that we have killed ourselves over and over again, and we will never learn.
Well, yeah. If you go to
Chris.
Yeah, if you look at Greek society or Greek theater, let's say the literature of ancient Greece, then you go to the literature of Shakespeare, and then you go to the literature of today. One thing is different. All these different times in history have had differences in technology, but one thing that is consistent is human behavior. That never changes.
All right. I think we're kind of at the end of that, unless we got okay. Thank you.
The one thing I want to get into tomorrow is DeepSeek. That has really shaken up the American.
Did you send me that?
I tried to. I think it's. I don't know. Maybe it didn't go through, but we'll get there. There are more. There are more articles on it, and I'll try to refresh that a bit.
Sure.
I'll just give everybody a heads up on that. The Chinese have come up with an AI, that is way cheaper, way faster, and way better than and like anywhere from 20 to 50 times less costly and free compared to the American ones. Until just a few months ago, the Americans were confidently saying that our technology is so much more advanced than China's that they're going to be behind us for some time, particularly in AI. The Chinese have turned that around and used very simple techniques to make a much better, faster AI. So we'll get into that tomorrow.
The interesting thing is about that AI, and we can get in, as you say, we'll get into that tomorrow, is one of the things that developers did about 20 to 30 years ago was what they called open source. Open source allowed a concept to be developed by multiple people, so you had multiple generations, and they allowed open source to be free. It wasn't to say that you didn't buy products over time, you did. Right, because there were many open source.
We'll explain all this tomorrow.
Were based on open source. Yeah.
Wait till it's relevant.
The Chinese have gotten the free, whereas the Americans are not doing free right now.
Yeah. So we'll get into tomorrow. We can establish a base of information rather than split it up from today and tomorrow. And minutes ago, you wanted to buy from Canada. Now you're talking about getting stuff from China. No, this is something that this is kind of like we're not kind of buying it. It's actually free, but there's more consequences.
I get where Gary's coming from. I do get where Gary is coming from on this. Right?
Yeah, which kind of illustrates the globalization we face. I mean, it's almost impossible to get away from buying or using services from all over the world.
Yep. All right. So I think we can kind of call it quits at that point.
Okay, Gary. I'm gonna get a hold of you so we can do some more wings. I still owe them.
You still owe him.
Without further ado, I bid you adieu. Pray for